Health and safety regulation itself hasn't been affected by the recession. The Health and Safety Executive are still enforcing, and in fact we've seen them take on a whole load of new recruits. However, health and safety management has undergone some changes over the last year. Businesses are downsizing, merging, and there's been a lot of redundancies, and those have flung up some challenges for health and safety professionals. Well, there's been numerous changes over the last year to 18 months. However, the two most important changes have been the introduction of the Corporate Manslaughter Act and also the introduction of the Health and Safety Offences Act.
When the Corporate Manslaughter Act came into force 18 months ago, businesses were rightly very anxious about how it would affect them. I think the first thing to say is that there's been very little consistency between police forces in this matter. The police don't appear to have been trained either by the Health and Safety Executive or the Crown Prosecution Service, and they don't seem to be particularly talking amongst themselves as the best way forward. So the situation still is quite unclear as to how these matters are going to be taken forward. The police are certainly investigating these cases in a slightly different way to the Health and Safety Executive. Traditionally, the Health and Safety Executive have come into the workplace and taken lots of informal statements using their Section 9 powers, and then have taken more formal statements if necessary. The police have taken a slightly different tact. They have come in and maybe had lots of informal discussions with the employees, but they are then subjecting the lower level management to more formal interviews. These are often being conducted at the police station. They can take up to a day, and they're being videotaped. Now, this is quite an ordeal for these managers who've never experienced anything like it before, and it's been quite difficult to prepare these clients for this sort of experience because we don't know exactly the format the interviews will take. When the police come into the workplace to conduct these investigations, they will, like the Health and Safety Executive, want to see a great deal of paperwork and also have access to all the employees. We would therefore advise that clients make sure that their policies are all in place and that they have a clear procedure for dealing with their accident investigations. We also suggest that they have in place some sort of second-tier representation for their managers. If their managers are going to be interviewed by the police, then they are entitled to independent legal advice, and there needs to be some sort of plan in place for these lawyers to be contacted if the managers are being interviewed by the police. The police have so far only laid charges in one case under the Corporate Manslaughter Act. They relate to a fatal accident involving a geologist who was unfortunately trapped in a trench when he was taking soil samples. The company, Cotswold Geotechnical Holdings, are only a small company, and the police have laid charges against both the company and gross negligence charges against the director. Most commentators are in agreement that we don't think this is going to take our understanding of the Act very much further, because the proceedings could have been brought under the old legislation. However, the matter will come before the court in February 2010, and hopefully the court will give us some insight as to how they intend to deal with the legislation. The Health and Safety Offences Act, which came into force in January, increased the level of penalty for health and safety offences across the board, although it did not increase legal liability for such offences. The Act was brought into force to increase the penalties to such a level that it was hoped that it would deter businesses from poor health and safety management and practices. The fines have been increased across the board from £5,000 to £20,000. A fine of £20,000 was always available for the more serious offences, but the lower regulatory offences usually attracted a fine of £5,000, and it's that increase from £5,000 to £20,000 which will hit businesses badly. Imprisonment is also an option for lots of these offences where it previously wasn't, and there were cases which could only be heard in the Magistrates' Court, which now can, in serious cases, be sent up to the Crown Court for sentencing.
I think over the next few months, clients can expect to see enforcement in relation to fire safety. This has been a very hot topic, if you forgive the pun, over the last few months. Fire officers are becoming more familiar with the legislation, and we're seeing an increase in enforcement in this area. I think in relation to health and safety generally, we're going to see a focus on sector-specific areas such as fleet management and also falls from vehicles.
Previously, the more serious health and safety offences attracted a fine of £20,000 in the Magistrates' Court and an unlimited fine in the Crown Court, and that remains. However, the less serious cases only attracted a £5,000 fine in the Magistrates' Court. These have now been increased to £20,000. In addition, imprisonment is now an option for quite a few of these offences. Some of the cases which previously could only be tried in the Magistrates' Court can now be sent to the Crown Court for sentencing, and these will attract an unlimited fine.
Over the next few months, companies are going to face many challenges. In relation to health and safety, I think it would be naive to expect them to have health and safety expenditure at the top of their priorities. However, I think that they can make some simple steps to prioritise what are going to be the main challenges, and in particular they should look out for changes to the day-to-day operations. So if they're moving premises, if they're closing premises, commissioning new plant, that would be outside daily operations and would need some extra special procedures to deal with those. Because after all, what clients don't want is to be facing a health and safety prosecution when they should be concentrating on the commercial side of their business.